We now move on to the last section of creating our tax measures for our balance sheet. Okay, so to do that, we need to go to our balance sheet analysis. So this just collapses, go to balance sheet analysis. There we go. Okay, first measure we're going to create. So our balance sheet. Current year. Okay, so we can now create a variance statement. We're going to say selected value. So now in this instance, we're going to go and look at our balance sheet template. Okay, then we're going to say, if we look at the balance sheet template, the balance sheet items column, if any of those items equals a certain value, text, then bring me the measure. That's what we're going to do now. And we're going to use the same, and we're looking just for the current year. So when we design our balance sheet and we only want to look at the current year's figure, this is the text that we write. We're going to, if you remember, we're going to use the switch true function. Okay, so first one, current item. Okay, so the first one is total current assets. If it's total current assets, we're going to reference to our total current assets measure. There we go. Okay. I'm just going to speed it up a bit. So that's the first one. Now we're going to say total non-current assets. This one, yep. If the line item equals total current liabilities, then we want to show the total non-current liabilities. I'm going to do the same for assets, total. For total. So we've got our current assets. So this needs to be non-current. So this one here. Let's make sure. So current assets, non-current assets, total non-current assets, current liabilities. This should be current liabilities, non-current liabilities. Okay, so I was just correcting myself there. Okay, let's do total assets. Let's do total liabilities. I'll just check the correctness of this text to make sure it's 100% the same as the income statement, the balance sheet template. Otherwise, these measures won't work. Okay, next one. The total, I think it was stockholders. reference here to the total liabilities and equity. Okay. Okay, so this is make sure we've got all the assets, we've got all the liabilities, we've got the total assets, we've got the liabilities, we've got the stockholders equity total. I think we just that looks fine. Then what we're going to say for anything else, use the balance sheet values measure, the values amount. Current assets, current item. Okay, we're just going to close that off. Let's just see what's going on here. Oh, that should just be filter. Okay, so let me just enter that. Okay, there's no error on that, so that looks fine. Okay, so that's the balance sheet current year values that we bring through. So just to check this, to make sure what I've talked about. So if we go back to our spreadsheet that we import. So if you go the balance sheet template, here we go. It's this column here that we're referencing to. So if we've got it written like that, total lowercase current assets, it needs to be exactly like that. So if I look at the liabilities, total current assets is all lowercase except the start. I'm just checking all these. So it does look right, like I've got it right. The way I've written the code. But we'll check it later. If we do get any errors in our coding, we'll just go back and reference that. Okay, so that's our first measure that we can create. Okay, so what I do here is I'm just going to highlight this before I press enter. Control C. We're going to now create the same measure, but for last year. So we go new. So I've gone Control C, new measure. I'm going to Control V. I'm going to change that CY from current year to last year. And all I'm going to do here is just change these to the last year measure. So in the first one, we've got our current assets. There we go, last year. Let's do the same with our non-current assets last year. Then we've got our total current liabilities. So I think it might just be current liabilities last year. Okay, so current assets last year. I'm just running through this and make sure that I've written the right measures. They're all referenced to last year's measure. Okay, that looks fine. Okay, if you remember the only thing we need to change, yes, we need to reference to the date add. Look at 1 year back. Okay, so what we're going to do is I'm just going to delete that. So let's start with calculate. Filter. No reference to this variance. There we go. And then we're just going to add the date add function because we want to look 1 year back. So we're going to say dates. This one here, date. And we're going to say -1 year. Okay, that should work. So if I press enter, it should work. There we go, no errors. So it's exactly the same measure as the previous one. Just referencing back to the last year measure, and then we've also added the time intelligence at the end. All right, so let's move on to the next measure. Call this the balance sheet vertical analysis. CY. So this one here. Let's divide this. So sorry, it's divide function. So we're going to take our current year figure for the balance sheet, and we're going to divide it by the total assets. So all we've done was just done the total vertical analysis. We're just comparing it. We're looking at the current year's figure for the item, and we divide it in relationship to total assets. Okay, that works. We're going to do the same with last year. Yeah, we're going to reference to last year. So you also need to say divide. And here we're going to look at total assets last year. Okay, so we look at what's last year's figure for the line item on the balance sheet, and we divide it by the total assets for last year. Okay, then what we need to do is we need to create, so we need to create a table. Let's see if we haven't done that yet. Okay, we'll do that a bit later. Okay, next one is our balance sheet year-on-year change value. It's the next measure we're going to create. So we call this balance sheet year-on-year change. Okay, so let's do this. Okay, selected value. Again, we're going to refer to the balance sheet template. Switch true. Okay. We can say the current item reference to the variance. Okay, so now what we're going to say here is that if the line item equals total current assets, remember now we're looking at the year-on-year change. For example, what's the difference, what's the movement from 2017 to 2018 financial year? So what we need to tell Power BI is look at the total current assets for the current year and then subtract it from total current assets for last year. So that's what we've done. It's as simple as that. Okay, so I'm just going to carry on with the rest of this DAX formula. I'm going to do it now for each of the totals, subtotals. Okay, so we look at non-current assets. And then I'm going to subtract my non-current assets for prior. Okay. Okay, so I hope you're following along with me. Okay, so I've done total liabilities. Okay, so what I've still got left is equity. Okay, so total equity less total equity for last year. Okay. Okay, total liabilities and stock holders equity. Okay, so this is liabilities plus equity minus this one, yeah. Okay, that should be all the subtotals and totals. So I just want to run through it. So current assets, it looks fine. Looks fine. Okay, then we're just going to wrap off this DAX formula with a calculate. I know this looks complicated, but you'll get a feel for it. Okay, then we also need to put the time comparison. So we need to put date add because we're looking at the year-on-year change. One year back. Okay, I'm just going to press enter, see what happens, if it works. Year-on-year. Okay, so we've picked up an area here somewhere. Looks like it's over here. So let's see if I take that out. Okay, that works fine. All right, so that's the year-on-year change. Okay, then we're moving on. I think what I'm going to do for the next one, I might just copy and paste this. Let's just see. Okay, yeah, we're going to do the year-on-year change percentage. So I'm going to highlight that, Control C, then I'm going to go new measure. Okay, I'm going to Control V to paste it. Okay, I'm going to change that to percentage. Okay, so let's run through this. So now what we want to say is for total current assets, we want to look at the balance sheet change amount. So we go BS year-on-year change. There we go, the value, the measure we've just created. And we're going to say divide that by current assets last year. So all we're now saying is look at the change of current assets. So it's the difference between the current and the prior period, and divided by the prior period to get the percentage change. So what's nice now here, all we need to do is just change this variable to BS year-on-year. We can actually highlight this if you want. You can Control C and just copy and paste it. So we just override all this. You can type it out. You can either copy and paste, or what you can do is you can just type in BS and select that one. That's basically what I'm just selecting, that measure that we've created. Okay, and then I need difference the bottom here. Let's have a look here. So this is a percentage change. Okay, so we've done for all that. Let's have a look. Year-on-year change. Okay, so what we need to, I'm just going to rewrite this thing. I'm going to leave the date added just there. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to say divide our year-on-year change. Just want to make sure this works first before we run through this. Okay, let's see, that should work. Okay, that looks fine. So again, what we've done here is we've just looked at the year-on-year change, but as a percentage. We've brought in that measure that we've done previously. It actually calculates the difference between the current assets, between the two periods, and it divides it by the last year figure to get a percentage change. So we've done it for all the line items. If the line items are not showing, if these subtotals are not showing on the format of the balance sheet, then we use this formula here. We say just take the year-on-year change and divide it by the previous year figure, because we're looking 1 year back, one period back. Okay, so that should be fine. Okay. And what we do now is we're going to create a table, a menu table in the next video, and then we're going to wrap up finishing the last measure for the balance sheet.